Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm loud. All right. My name is Alexander Hatter, and I'm a third-year student here at Metro Illinois College High School. And today I have the glorious job of introducing Mayor Coleman. Since elected in 1999, Mayor Coleman has worked hard to make Columbus a center of innovation by investing in partnerships with Battelle, Ohio Health, and Technic Columbus, to name a few. Through his leadership, Forbes magazine has named Columbus the #1 up-and-coming tech city. The mayor has also helped to make Columbus the best place for young professionals and students to live, work, and raise a family. Now, the last one doesn't really apply for me yet. I'm not there. But as a resident of Columbus, I do see the difference, with Get Green Columbus spearheading change with Recycle Columbus, curbside pickup, and LEED LED certification, showing a concern for not only the environment, but also the people. I now present you with Mayor Michael B. Coleman.
Thank you very much. I know this young man. I've watched him grow up. Known him ever since he was a knee-high to a grasshopper. And I know his dad, too. He's a fine young man, and he's really done well over the years. Real proud of you. I'm so glad to be at this school. I've been here many times, and I'm always marveled at the quality of students, the quality of teaching, the quality of education. This is one of the best schools in the country, and I'm proud to be here, and proud for this third forum to take place here. And there's really briefings. And the first briefing was establishing a baseline for education in Columbus. Learned an awful lot about that. Then the second briefing was at the downtown high school, which was also a great school where young people were preparing for jobs, preparing for the future, and doing well. And there we talked about the job market and the skills that are necessary for the work world. As young people graduate from high school, are they ready for the jobs that are out there now and into the future? And are the skills been set out for them? Today's hearing is about the impact of new technology and innovations through K through 12 education, and how innovation is changing the roles of teachers and principals and administrators and public officials. And I'm very much looking forward to this, because this entire presentation will be innovative. And we'll have Aimee Kennedy, the principal of Columbus Metro High, and Bill Sims, the president and CEO of the Ohio Association of Public Charter Schools. I welcome all of you here, and I look for an engaging period here where we can talk about some interesting things. Andy, you have anything?
Thank you, Mayor. And just very briefly, look forward to the presentations both from Eric and Tom and Aimee and Bill. But one of the exciting parts about being in the Metro High School is, Columbus City Schools has helped to really lead the way in shaping this great educational asset for children, not just assigned to Columbus City Schools, but to children throughout the region. So we're excited to be in a place today that was clearly cutting edge and innovative just a couple of years ago, and Aimee and her outstanding staff have continued to make it a great leader, not just as a model here in the state and around the country. So it's the perfect place for have a conversation about the future and how we can leverage some of these great assets in our communities to promote ways in which and paths in which children can be successful in Columbus, and continuing to put us on the leading edge of development for the next generation. So proud to be here, and we look forward to the presentations and the discussion today. Eric?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council President Ginther. Welcome, everybody, to Metro. It's a pleasure to be here today. I do want to the mayor's told you about the nature of the topic today, and that is innovations in teaching and learning. As we think about the future of the Columbus schools, we want to make sure that we are incorporating those innovations into our thinking. We're going to talk about two different types of. We're broadly speaking, these topics come in two buckets. The first is the innovations that are available through online and other technological software, and those in turn fall into two different categories. The first of those categories would be content, right? Our ability to access new material that we couldn't otherwise have accessed. And then the second is in the area of assessment, our ability to individualize learning for students. The second broad category of innovation is in school models, right? How are we teaching and learning today that's different than what it was when all of us went through school? These are both incredibly important topics, because if you think about the constraints that we currently live under in trying to provide the best education we can in our schools, these technological innovations are really helping us break through those constraints. What are the constraints that we typically have? Well, Mayor, imagine we wanted to offer a physics class in every high school in Columbus. Well, one is, do we have teachers, right, who can teach physics at the highest level? That's a typical constraint. The second is, do we have time in the day to do that, because we have all the other requirements and criteria that they have to meet. And the third is money, right? Could we afford to offer that course? Of course, now, as Tom will give us examples, we can go online and access a physics class for free, taught by the greatest professors in the country and in the world. Bring that material to our students. Think about the issue of class size. We talk about that a lot. How can a teacher really individualize programming for 30, 35 students in a classroom, all of whom are moving at different paces, learn in different ways? Well, now we have technology, as Tom will share with us, that can enable us to customize the learning to the students in the classroom. And then when we get to the school models, we know how frustrating it is for teachers to prepare exciting, innovative lessons, and then the bell rings 45 minutes into the lesson, and they have to move to another subject. Today we'll be able to hear about innovations that are changing the school day and the structure, everything about our schools, including and up to what the diploma represents and means. So that's what we mean when we talk about technology changing the way we think about schools. Those are the topics we're going to cover today, and we will start with Aimee Kennedy, who is the principal of Metro School, and will talk to us about this terrific school model.
Thanks, Eric, and thanks to Mayor Coleman and President Ginther for thinking of us. We are really excited to host this session. Thank you guys all for coming in the middle of the day. We're really glad you could be here. And I do have slides. Really, I have a Prezi, which was a little stretch for me to get this up and running, so I hope you all will be duly impressed. All right, so you can see that I tried to capture sort of the topics of innovation that you can find here at Metro. You see some pretty typical things when you think of innovation, like computers. You know, everyone thinks, oh, computers, technology, innovation. But I also wanted to show everyone on here, there's an example, of course, of one of our first graduates. We're so proud of them. I'll talk about them in a little bit. You can see that we have students who regularly access campus. One of my actually, you saw him today. He's doing an internship with me. He wants to be a school administrator when he grows up. So a picture of him on campus, and then you can see a picture in the top right of one of our students doing what we call a design challenge. And so we had a coffee challenge here. And what I was telling you about tomorrow, the student work that's going to happen is also a design challenge. So you can see that obviously we're in a STEM school. We know that some people think the only definition of STEM is literally science, technology, engineering, and math. We disavow that notion. For us, STEM really starts with these competencies that you see up here on the board. These are our Metro habits. These are the competencies that students need to be successful in any college or career field. For us, every class is a STEM class at Metro. art class, English class, Spanish class, because in every single one of those classes, students are working to be critical thinkers, to communicate their findings, to collaborate with others, to be engaged in their learning. And we believe that these are the competencies, the sort of foundational beliefs that are at the heart of any effective school model, any model that takes into account not just academic content, but also personal development and persistence in work habit. This is who we are in a couple of snapshots. We're an inclusive STEM school. So what that means is that anyone can come here as long as you're promoted to 9th grade. It's a completely non-selective lottery process. A little over half of our students are from Columbus City schools. That's by design. We will always have at least half of our student body enrollment come from Columbus City schools. The other half are in this great big chart down here at the bottom. You can see there's a pretty equal representation from all the districts in Central Ohio. A third of our students are economically disadvantaged, and 10% of our students are identified with special needs. So we've been around for 7 years, and the first thing I want to talk to you about is our graduates. We've had 3 graduating classes, 235 little Metro alum out there in the world. While they were with us, they earned 8,195 college credits while they were still high school students. And upon graduation, they were offered $11.6 million in scholarship opportunities. So thank you. Whenever I talk about this, sometimes I say, our kids look really good on paper. And they do look really good on paper, but as you got to meet them today, you know they're really great in real life too. But we like to talk about this because it shows that even a really innovative, non-traditional model can create students who are competing with traditional, high-performing, college prep, content-focused schools. For 3 years in a row, 100% of our students have graduated from high school. They've all been accepted into a college or university, and 85% of students in this building access at least one college class before they graduate. So the overwhelming majority of students in this building, this non-inclusive STEM school, need less than 4 years to finish high school. So the ACT, the college entrance exam, this is a statistic that we like to talk about because we know that it's not just projects, it's not just a great spirit and persistence, but there has to be some performance on some standardized tests. So our average score here is 24.5, which is above the state average, and that's something that is really affirming to the work that we're doing because, again, it's a completely non-selective admission. So we get students with an academic gap or with a work habit gap or maybe both or maybe some other kinds of concerns that happen. So for us, we always are keeping an eye on both a skill-based curriculum and a content-based curriculum. So one of the things that makes Metro really different is that we are really informed by the broader context. And so by that, one example is that we are part of multiple networks. So we're a STEM school, we're an early college, and so we belong to networks of other STEM schools, both in the state and in the nation, and also early colleges, so that we can work with like-minded individuals, other progressive reform-based school leaders and school programs. It helps us think about what is the work that we're doing here, what else is out there, what can be better, maybe someone to problem solve with who's having similar kinds of issues. So the network piece of our structure is a really important piece. This is our true governance structure. So this is a graphic of my governing board. A third of the folks on my governing board are from higher ed, a third of the folks on my governing board are from business and industry, and then the other third are from local school districts. So this is a great dynamic for us, for me as a school leader, to sit in a board meeting and hear questions and hear ideas from not just local school people, not just people in the community, but also someone who's got a business entrepreneurial lens, or someone who's got a focus on, hey, these are trends in higher education, what are we doing about that? So this is really an accountability measure for us as a school that we really value pretty deeply. Last but absolutely certainly not least, these are just a few of the community partners that we call our friends in the Central Ohio region. And I just want you to take a look at some of these partners because they're not all engineering and science firms, right? You see Shadowbox on there, you see the Past Foundation, the Mid-Ohio Food Bank, and each of these partners on this slide, and we could probably do a whole Prezi of all the partnerships that we've had. But each of these partners on this slide have helped us, and we've helped them in some way. It could be an expert with content area expertise to help students and teachers develop projects. It could be a willingness to host a student intern. It could be, we have extra space in our building, would you like to hold a class there? So the range of partnership opportunities and the different levels of involvement that we have with the Central Ohio community is robust and diverse, and it really helps us keep an eye on what's the pulse of the community. What is career ready really? What does that really look like? The second sort of big chunk about why Metro is different is the role of educators here. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the role of teachers. In a lot of systems, educators are policy implementers. So they receive guidance or policies or curriculum from someone and they implement. They do it. They're like running a marathon in their class. Here at Metro, we encourage teachers and leaders to be policy makers, policy implementers, and policy evaluators. So we encourage people to make decisions based on things like student data, student perception. So we use different kinds of data to inform the kinds of decisions that we're making here at the school. So we do use growth data to see how much progress are we making with students. We also use just straight achievement data to see how are we stacking up against other schools. We also take a look at what are our students and families telling us. What are some changes we might need to make, things we might need to take into account. What that looks like in the classroom is curriculum that's evolving. So you can see in this graphic here that the curriculum that teachers teach in this classroom is not driven by a textbook. It's not driven by a pacing guide that I keep in my office. The curriculum in this school is driven by what's going on in the greater context, how kids are doing in the class, and what's the outcome going to be when we measure it. One way that we do this here is through design challenges. And we've talked about a couple of those with the projects you've seen here, with some of the pictures on the front of the slide. But design challenges are it's this interdisciplinary project, so teachers work together across disciplines. They come up with a real world problem, something that we don't really know the answer to. We put kids in project teams and we say, create a solution. Create a solution. That's really powerful when you think about some of the other assessments that students are asked to do. Do a worksheet, do a test, write a paper. But when we say create something, defend it, use evidence, that's really putting kids in a situation where they have to not only use their content knowledge, but they also have to use those Metro habits. So the third big chunk of Metro that's different from a regular school system is that our environment is adaptive. We have planned for both acceleration and remediation. What we really want to be able to do is recognize talent, reward talent, and cultivate it, while at the same time recognize a skill gap, diagnose the skill gap, and fix it. So one of the primary mechanisms that we use for that is mastery learning. So in a mastery learning system, it's pretty much the opposite of what regular high school looks like. What you see on the left is a regular high school. Everyone comes in, they sit for the same amount of time, but how they perform is different. Here at Metro, it's not like that. Everyone comes in, they start in a place, but time is not the deciding factor of when they move on. Performance is the deciding factor of when they move on. At Metro, in order to get your high school credit, you have to earn it at a 90%. You have to get an A. This is the only model that makes sense to us. The logic of putting a kid in Algebra 1, having them earn a 70%, and then moving them on to the next math class and expecting them to earn anything higher than a 70% is ludicrous. What makes more sense to us is a real clear understanding of what it is kids need to know and be able to do, being flexible with time, being patient, being design thinkers, working with kids, getting them to get an A, and then having them move on. So what that looks like in a kid's daily schedule is something like this. So up at the top, you probably can't really see the words, but year 1 student at the top, year 2 student at the bottom. What you see in the year 1 student is a pretty prescriptive program. Kids come in, they're going to math, they're going to science, they're going to English. They can have one elective. It can be art or engineering. We know that kids come to us and they can probably perform well in art class, they can probably perform well in gym class, but we don't know if they can read, we don't know if they can write, and we don't know if they can problem solve. So each one of these classes in the first term of the student schedule is a credit earning opportunity. Each of these terms is a credit earning opportunity. So kids can earn 9 credits a year. This is very different than a typical high school system where kids can earn 5, 6, 7 credits a year. So in our system, at the end of 2 years, a student who's accelerated pretty quickly through, one of those really talented kids who would be bored in a regular high school curriculum for 4 years, can be done with 18 high school credits at the end of 2 years. You don't need very many more high school credits to graduate. At that point in time, what we do with those kids is we move them on to a college coursework at Ohio State. But obviously not every kid is like that. Some kids need more time. So this system lets them repeat classes and revisit classes without this sort of stigma that comes with, oh, I'm repeating my freshman year. Because they're entering and exiting at different points in that school year. And it's not an all or nothing game. You can be accelerating in math, but recovering in English. One of the college pathways that we have found to be pretty successful here, the entrance pathways into college, involve these notions that we call learning centers. And this is where some of the partnerships that I mentioned in the first part have really come into play. They've provided us space, they've provided us content area expertise. But you can see these are 4 career fields that are very relevant to Central Ohio. The way these learning centers work is we could talk about Bodies to start with. Bodies is a biomedical engineering learning center. So when kids are pretty much done with their high school stuff, they enroll in something like Bodies. At Bodies, they take Biology 1113, the Ohio State Biology for Science Majors class. They take Biomedical Engineering, which is a high school elective. And they do it in a hospital. So they see biology and biomedical engineering in context. Embedded in this are internship opportunities, embedded in this are research opportunities. So we're really pushing students farther than they were pushed in this high school building to be owning that content, to be working in the real world, and to be accessing college. So technology, which is usually our friend here in this building. Technology is embedded in almost all of the work that we do here. The curriculum that we have here is not driven by textbooks. It's definitely driven by content and standards. So technology is something that we need because the technology can evolve as quickly as the content evolves. So our computer is sort of like our virtual textbook. What we can see in this picture, hey Leon, flip to the next picture for me. What we can see in this picture is a tool that I hope Eric talks about a little bit. It's called Assistments. So we actually staged this picture because I wanted to really drive this point home that the technology that we have here enhances the work that teachers do in class. It's not a replacement. It's not an either or, it's an and. It's a support. It's an extension. So what you can see in this computer is a report of a student and how much time they spent in this Assistments program. Assistments is a tool that kids can log into the internet from any internet device. They can get automatic feedback if they got the question right, if they got the question wrong. They can get a hint. And the teacher can see in a snap, hey, my class all got number 1 right, they all got number 2 wrong. They can see this group of kids missed all of these numbers. This group of kids needs to accelerate. They're done with this. But you still see a paper and a pencil and an eraser. You still see a calculator. So you see that technology it's an addition to. It's definitely not an either or. And then the next snapshot that I have for you is, this is interesting because we really want our students to be technology natives here. So we use an online course management system called TaskStream. It's really similar to Carmen or WebCT or anything that provides educators the opportunity to post resources online. Students can get the resources offline. They can do their work and repost it back online. The teacher can grade it and give them feedback. So this is sort of like that virtual folder that we used to get in elementary school, like the take home, the return back to school, and here it is, all online. And what you see here is students are still engaged in the classwork, but they can access these resources at any time that they need them. Some of the other things that we've done around technology here include giving all students a name.number email address. We have an online gradebook system. We really want for all of the things that come with college and that come with careers, we want students to be able to try them out here first so we can sort of help them get over the bumps in the road before it's a really high stakes event for them. And if you guys want to know any more, I welcome you to come back at any time for a tour and you can see more.
Thank you so much, Aimee. We really appreciate it. Mayor or Council President, any questions for Aimee?
Aimee, I've been here several times, and I know some of the folks in the room have been, but maybe folks watching at home have never heard much about Metro School. Long question, but all in the same area. How do you go about selecting, evaluating, supporting, and developing your staff? So how do you go about building the team, supporting the team, evaluating the team, and then who ultimately gets to decide who's part of your faculty here?
Yeah, that's a great question. To work backwards, ultimately I decide. How do I evaluate them? Multiple measures. We're part of a performance-based compensation pilot right now, so that's something we're all really excited about. We use data, so it could be achievement data, it could be perception data. Obviously, some of the traditional things, classroom observations, we have a pretty robust rubric that teachers are really aware of. The great thing about this school and the way it's set up is it's not really a secret how anyone's doing in their class because there's windows or this is actually a teaching space when it's not being used for a briefing. So you can just walk by and see what's going on. So there's a lot of perception data. How do we select and support them? That's a good question. I think I found a really good answer. One of the hardest, what I did was I thought about what's the hardest thing we do at Metro? And how do I find someone who can do that? And one of the hardest things we do are these design challenges. Getting teachers to work together, to think about something that they don't know the answer to craft it for kids, to schedule it, that's really hard. So I started at including a design challenge prompt in my hiring question. So I would send prospective teachers this design challenge topic. And then I would say, come prepared to talk about what you would have kids create and what other classes could work with you. So that was a great question for me to see who's even willing to give something like this a try. How do we support them? We actually do mostly embedded professional development. So by that I mean I have a weekly staff meeting with teachers. I have some really talented teachers here who are just really great. And we are always sharing best practices and modeling best practices in our staff meetings. So we just were reading an article about giving feedback to students. So in order to read that article and process it in the staff meeting, I pretended like it was my class and like it was a lesson. So they did activities with the article that they can take back and use in their class. So modeling.
Very successful and a lot to be proud of. And you're a great leader and wonderful students and great staff. What makes duplicating some of this in public schools challenging?
That's a great question. What makes it challenging is probably that it's different. And different can be scary, and different can be, you can feel sort of isolated being different. One of the things that makes it really possible is that my board trusts me, but they are not afraid to ask critical questions and to push what I'm thinking and what I'm doing. So I don't know that, I certainly don't think it's impossible. It's hard work to have a school like this, but it's hard work to have any school. It depends on what kind of work do you want to be doing, really.
Thank you again, Amy. We appreciate it. We're going to move on to Bill Sims now, and we'll make sure that we're loading his presentation for you. Bill is the president and CEO of the Ohio Association of Public Charter Schools, which is, of course, the association of this growing number of schools in Ohio. But he's going to be talking to us about the overall field of school models in the nation. Before joining the Ohio Alliance for Public Charter Schools in early 2007, he served as Vice President of School Management for K-12 Inc., which is a Virginia-based curriculum and school management company that actually manages and runs charter schools across the United States. Bill is, as I mentioned, an acknowledged leader in this field. He spent 14 years as a teacher, history department chair, admissions director, school principal, and a head of school in both public and private education. He's also served as executive director of the Cisneros Foundation, executive director and president of the Denver Council on Foreign Relations, and a number of other important positions that he's held both in the nonprofit world and in the private sector. So, Bill, thank you for being with us today, and we look forward to your presentation.
Yes. Mayor, it's a pleasure to be here. Mr. President, it's a pleasure to be here and to be able to make a presentation to you. Metro is a truly amazing place. I was just sitting here and realizing that they actually teach the periodic table of elements backwards. Metro looks a lot like charter schools. It's a different kind of configuration, and you probably have a waiting list of people trying to get in here as well. I sometimes like to think of charter schools as a disruptive innovation. That word was used in a meeting that I was at earlier today. One could say that charter schools are in fact a new and innovative school model in and of themselves. They're also somewhat of a new and misunderstood model, and so I thought I'd begin with some basic facts about charter schools both in Ohio and nationally. And I think a good place to start is just with what is a charter school, because I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about this. They're tuition-free, independently operated public schools, and they're supported by state and federal tax dollars. Charter schools are given greater operational freedom than traditional public schools, but in exchange, they're accountable to the same 26 state test and non-test performance indicators. There are charter schools with specific missions to serve gifted students. There are STEM-type charter schools, special needs schools, virtual cyber-type schools, among many others. Ohio charter schools are primarily based in the Big 8 urban districts, and that's by statute. So let's take a look at charter schools nationally. And this is probably a little bit of an eye chart. There are some copies of this presentation over on the side if you'd like to pick them up afterwards. But speaking nationally, there are about 5,600 charter schools nationally, representing about 5.8% of public schools in America. There are about 91,000 non-charter public schools in the United States. 41 states plus the District of Columbia have laws authorizing charter schools. Now looking nationally again, but at students this time, there are about 2 million students enrolled in charter schools nationally, and there are approximately 47,300,000 students in non-charter schools. Charters then represent about 4.2% of all public school students in America. Notably, there are also about 610,000 students nationally on waiting lists to get into charter schools. It's a growing phenomenon. Now let's look at Ohio public school students and that landscape. There are currently about 126,000 charter school students in Ohio. This is a slightly old presentation, this piece. I am now quoting closer to about 130,000. There are about 1.6 million non-charter public students in the state of Ohio. In Ohio, charter school students make up about 7.2% of our total number of public school students. If you take the 130,000 figure, it's closer to 7.3. This compares nationally to the 4.2% that you saw on the previous slide. So you can see that Ohio, in the sense of charter school demographics, is a little bit accelerated. Now looking at charters in the nation on the issue of ethnicity. Ohio charter schools are serving a higher percentage of minority students, especially African American, but slightly less so with respect to Hispanics. Looking at Ohio charters and the nation on the issue of disadvantaged, and this through the lens of free and reduced meals. On a percentage basis, Ohio charters serve many more disadvantaged children, and the numbers are increasing, about 25% higher. Now looking at Ohio charters in the nation by a geographic locale. Nationally, about 50% of charter schools are city-based. In Ohio, that number is close to 75%. Now that's not accidental. By law and statute in this state, charter schools have to be in the Big 8 urban districts or in challenged school districts. That other 25% also includes the virtual schools, the cyber schools in the state, and they are in open enrollment, so those students can come from all across the state. Now looking quickly at charter schools at Ohio and the nation by organizational management. And this may be new information for many of you. In Ohio, there's an increase in the number of charters managed by for-profit management companies. And these are called EMOs. And Stephanie, if you hit it one more time, I'll call your attention to that little key over there. EMOs are what we call for-profit management companies, and CMOs are non-profit management companies. The state's low per-pupil funding for charter school students drives the charter school startups, what we call the independents, or sometimes called the mom-and-pop charter schools, to these for-profit management companies, because with limited resources, this is really the only place you can go to get the capital to start up a charter school. And that's becoming an increasingly big issue. It also, in my mind, puts a little bit of downward pressure on innovation, because I really believe that a lot of these independent small charters that start up and have started up are really where a lot of the innovation takes place. Okay, finally looking at virtual schools, or sometimes called cyber schools. This is important. Ohio has the largest number of students in virtual schools of any state excepting Arizona. And this is an important issue because Ohio has so many students on the grid, so to speak. I think that the number is somewhere between 30 and 35,000 students in virtual charter schools alone. As education reform trends towards blended learning and hybrid learning, and I'll have a little bit more to say about that in a minute, but I'm sure Tom Vander Ark, if we can get him, will have a lot to say about that. But as we trend towards the hybrid schools and the blended schools, with Ohio having so many students already on the grid, this is a true advantage for Ohio. It's one that we need to exploit. But it's a big issue because getting bandwidth of the variety that we need for schools like this to the door of every school and library is a big challenge. You can have fiber optics right up to the curb, but if it's just a pinhole into the building, it doesn't help us a bit. So this is a big issue for us from a development standpoint and obviously from a financial standpoint. So the original promise of charter schools. First, the autonomy for innovation, but with, and I put that in capitals, accountability. Charter schools are given, and you can hit that again, Steph. Charter schools are given greater operational freedom than traditional public schools, but in exchange, they are accountable to the same 26 state test and non-test test performance indicators. And then, if charter schools chronically underperform, by law they get closed down. So there is a myth about lack of accountability when it comes to charter schools. They're highly accountable. So what are some of the characteristics of charter schools? Well, they tend to be more agile. They're more agile because they're smaller and able to be responsive to rapidly changing technological and workforce readiness realities. And I think this is a really important issue because things are changing so fast in this country. The technology is changing fast, but so are the workforce demands. And in order to be able to keep our education tuned up to those realities, it demands agility. And these smaller schools tend to have a capacity to do that well. Then they're subject to less regulation. And therefore, again, like this school, more freedom to innovate. They're smaller in scale, as I've mentioned before, and so they tend to have more familial environments, which is very attractive to parents. There have been a lot of surveys done about why parents choose charter schools. And survey after survey, the number one reason is because they're looking for a safer environment. That's the number one reason. The number two reason is that they're looking for a more familial environment. They want a place where they can walk in the door and feel more comfortable. And the third reason is that they're looking for a good academic environment. And then there are various types. And these various different types are able to create unique cultural and purpose environments. Some of the innovations that have grown from the charter school movement, I'm going to make a list here. This is not meant to be comprehensive, but longer school days, virtual cyber schools, blended learning environments, district charter collaborations, teacher effectiveness and merit pay, the challenging of outdated educational models, and the development of next generational learning models, and of course parent choice. Parents choose a school environment that effectively matches their child's learning style, needs, and the parent's preferred cultural environment for their child. And one more notion, that children in poverty are capable of learning at high levels, not accepting that poverty is destiny. In other words, a no excuses outlook. Now let's take a look finally at some of the new and innovative charter school models, the rocket ship schools. This is a very interesting innovation coming out of California. It's a blended learning environment, and again, computer-assisted instruction with highly individualized learning. I know that they're interested in the possibility of moving here to Ohio if they can find the right environment for that. Right here in Ohio, the intergenerational schools. They're up in the Cleveland area. Highly successful school model with multi-generational community partnering. And then the KIPP academies. Their tagline is hard work and be nice. A franchise approach, I don't know that they would use that word, but in a sense a franchise approach to a no excuses culture of college expectations. And then the Quest academies. There are a couple of them. One is in Chicago, another is in New York. And this is project-based learning. And if you have a chance to go to either of these locations and visit, these are fascinating schools. The Yes Prep schools, low-income college prep schools with a heavy service learning culture. Right here in the Columbus area, we have the Graham schools. I don't have it up on the slide here, but experiential education is a key focus of those schools. The Carpe Diem schools, highly successful online program consisting of on-site teacher facilitators, coaches, and individualized computer-assisted instruction again. And then last, I've listed here the Seed schools. There's one that has just opened up in Cincinnati. Seed is kind of like Metro in a sense that it's neither fish nor fowl. Is it a charter school or is it a traditional public school? But it is a public school, Seed, but it's a boarding school. And I refer to it as a charter school. Some people don't. But it's a very interesting concept, high-performing college preparatory boarding school serving students from underserved communities. Let me close by mentioning that the Ohio Alliance for Public Charter Schools has now is about ready to have its second national conference. The first one was here in Columbus. The second one in 3 days, is going to be in Denver, Colorado. And it is a conference on best cooperative practices between charter and traditional public schools. This year, it's being co-hosted. If you want to go to the next slide, Steph. It's being co-hosted by, hit it again, 6 public school districts, including the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, and 6 state charter associations. This is a venue where all of the exciting practices that have taken place between charter schools and traditional public schools are taking place. And we collect these practices. There is a website. I guess I don't have it listed up there. But there is a website where you can go to see what the entire list of all of these practices are that we have collected, to see what's happening around the nation. These folks that are going to be at this particular conference are from all over the United States, from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco. So it's an exciting thing. And so I guess the point that I'm trying to make here at the end is that there's a lot of innovation going on in charter schools. There's a lot of innovation going on in traditional public schools. And there's some really exciting innovations going on in collaborative practices between the two.
Thank you, Bill. Questions, Mayor?
There's 6 state school districts participating in this conference. Is Columbus one of those?
Columbus is not. I tried to get Columbus to participate in the first one, but they weren't quite ready to do it. But Cleveland Metropolitan is participating in this one and did in the last one.
Okay. Give me an example of collaborative situations between districts and charters. Give me a couple examples of what you mean by that.
Well, the best one that I can think of right here in Columbus is what the Columbus City Schools is doing in terms of leasing some of its buildings to charters. Denver has been one of the best at this. They're even building new buildings that are being designed for both charter schools and the traditional public schools. Contains them both. There was a wonderful collaborative practice right here in Ohio between a district and a charter school on developing alternative energy, building windmills together. So everything from innovative practices to focusing on infrastructure.
How about programming, intermingling, anything like that going on?
There's lots of that going on across the country. In fact, one of the things I'll be happy to do is to give you a copy of the 2010 and this year's programs so that you can see what some of those are. I am serving on a council, a panel right now with the Columbus City Schools talking about we're talking about innovation and innovation funds and how charter schools can work together with the Columbus City Schools to improve student performance in schools. So it's happening here too. Yeah, we're very excited.
Can you submit to us examples of collaborative practices around the country between school districts and charters? I'd be very interested to see that. And now, Aimee, I wanted to ask you a question about policy making, teacher policy making. Could you go through that again?
Sure.
A teacher policy making example. Are you forcing decisions down to the teachers on what's going on with that? Explain it to me again, one more time.
So,
teach me.
I will teach you right now, Mayor Coleman. Be prepared. Okay.
Okay.
So sometimes what happens in schools is teachers are just policy implementers. They just receive policies. They receive pacing guides that say on week 1 you should cover chapter 2. On week 2 you should do chapter 3. These are the activities you should be doing. These are the assessments that you should be giving. That doesn't really develop in teachers a sense of ownership of their classroom. It's not particularly relevant because the world context and knowledge is changing so fast that for us to even right now sit down and say, well, you know, in June in economics class, this is what that lesson's going to be like, doesn't really make any sense because the world of economics will have changed by June. So it's important that we respect teachers as content area experts, as professionals who can design and deliver lessons and assessments to students. And now it doesn't mean like everyone does their own thing, it's a free-for-all, because we have here we have weekly face-to-face meetings. The building is designed so that we can see exactly what everyone's doing. There's a certain level of checks and balances, a certain level of transparency. But teachers can make decisions here about how they're going to teach something, what that looks like, when.
Do you have opportunities for teachers to have some continuing education on how they shape policy and situations that you ask them to go to?
I have not done that with them being more active at the state level, but that's something I should definitely consider.
I mean, I gave you an idea.
You did give me an idea. You taught me.
Yeah.
What's the irony in that?
Okay.
A couple of questions, and these might actually be first a comment and then I guess a question. Based on what I'm hearing today, both from Aimee and Bill, that local control and empowering decision-making at the school level with both principals and empowering teachers seem to be a common theme with successful models in both the things you've described. I guess I'd be interested in your take on that premise, and I'd be interested, Bill, if you have examples of charter schools that are sponsored by school districts, and then former Mayor Peterson in Indianapolis started a number of charter schools supported by the city there, how those have fared, and are there other mayors and cities across the country and school districts that have had successful charter schools?
Sure. So local control is like that's a loaded 2 words, huh? So the short answer to your question is yes. The people in the building need to be invested in the decision making in the analysis of the data, in making decisions based on data. So that's a really important piece of that. But there's a big spectrum between, Metro's, we say we're a small school with a big footprint. So we have 20 teachers, 1 principal, and we have 1 governing board. I mean, there's a lot of room between us and like a large urban district, but we're still a very flat organization. So I think if you think about the idea of a flat organization, there can be pretty large flat organizations where there's still a balance of influence from the broader context. So a lens of innovation and entrepreneurship and forward thinking and partnership, all of those things help us make the decisions that we make here. They're grounded in something, a common understanding, some facts about student achievement, what some of our friends in our networks are doing, what my board wants to see. So there's definitely influence in those.
I think one of the things that we understand in the charter school world is that school leadership is unbelievably important, the quality of that school leader. And the ability of that school leader to have, as I think you're suggesting, some flexibility in how to run that school and what is in the best interests of learning management at that school. And Aimee's, I think, addressed that well on several occasions, because what goes on here is a great example of that. In terms of what's happening in other states, well, I guess the second question you asked was related to charters of districts, yeah. And, of course,
Maybe non-traditional charters that are sponsored by either a school district or another public entity, a mayor or governor or whoever.
Yeah. Well, every state is different. And so in some states there's only one sponsor. In other states they call that an authorizer. And so you cannot generalize about that sort of thing. But in this state, every school district can authorize a charter school, and many have. And they come in a lot of different varieties as well. So that's certainly possible. But I wanted to get to the question of what's happening elsewhere. And Indiana and Indianapolis have been very fertile ground for school choice and new ideas in school choice. There are some tremendous examples of highly successful charter schools that are emerging now all across the country. And you see the money flowing to those schools that have been successful to replicate. And many states and cities are being proactive in trying to lure those successful schools, incentivize them to come to their city or their state. To be perfectly frank and honest, Ohio is not particularly attractive to them because there's a very low per pupil amount for charter schools. And that makes it very difficult. And in addition to that, and it's in the same vein of obstacles, is that in this state there is no public charter school support for facilities. And so if there's no facilities money and the per pupil amount given to charter schools is low, it's not a very attractive environment for some of these really high quality charter schools. There are some that come here in spite of all of that and are slugging away at it. But I think that if this state really wants to be attractive to some of these new school models, from a policy standpoint, things have got to change a little bit. Great example, Carpe Diem. I mentioned that in my presentation. Cincinnati is aggressively trying to lure a Carpe Diem school to that city. In fact, I think our former governor's assistant, Bob Summers, is active in that campaign.
So to add that, because you asked specifically about the former mayor of Indianapolis, Mayor Peterson, they have started an organization. It's called Mind Trust, and I'll provide you with some of the details, but they've actually raised a pool of funds that they're using, as Bill suggested, to entice these leading national models to the city of Indianapolis. And it is not exclusive to that. It's a piece of the overall reform plan in Indianapolis. It's not the only part. There's also significant elements in their plan that has to do with the traditional school district as well, the types of changes that we've discussed in some of our other briefings. But as Bill suggested, they are actually putting money on the table and saying to the top national folks, come here the same way a mayor and economic development department might do with a company that you were trying to lure to build a factory or to create development here. And so that is what former Mayor Peterson is involved in. It's called Mind Trust. Any other questions for Bill?
The best practices of collaboration.
I would definitely get that to you.
Right. So thank you both to Bill and Aimee. We have a few moments left, and in it, I did have a couple of examples in my presentation that I skipped at the beginning there. So I talked about in my introduction, Mayor and Council President, I talked about the availability of coursework online that is free. So these are some examples. Coursera is an example of a company that's been started. It's a consortium of higher education institutions. I'll show you what that consortium consists of in a moment. But here are just three examples of the kinds of courses. You see we have Introduction to Computational Finance and Financial Econometrics, Modern and Contemporary American Poetry, and Introduction to Mathematical Thinking. Couldn't be a more diverse set of offerings. All of these are online for free, designed at a college level, but accessible to all. So we can easily imagine our students getting and taking this coursework. Matt, go on to the next slide. These are the universities that are partners in them, and if you keep going, you'll see the number of participants already who are participating. We had 1.3 million students who are already participating. Another good example is Khan Academy. This is probably well known to many people who are paying attention. The story of the founding of Khan Academy has become a piece of the education landscape. This is Sal Khan was I think a hedge fund employee in Boston, and one day his sister and their children were visiting him, and he thought his niece was terrifically bright. Said to his sister, "Gee, let's take her around to the colleges in the Boston area and show her what she can aspire to." And his sister said to Sal, "No, she's not going to get into any of those colleges. She's not doing well in school." And he said, "Well, let me tutor her because I think she's bright." So he started tutoring her. The tutoring was so effective, his niece said, "Can I involve some of my friends in this tutoring?" He said, "Sure." Next thing you know, we have a program that is got over 3,500 different lessons, and they have delivered over 200 million times these 3,500 different lessons on every subject imaginable. This is targeted at the K-12 demographic that we have been discussing, and again, it is 100% free. And available on anybody's computer. Let's continue. Another example, a company called Udacity. This was actually started by a professor at Stanford. His name is Sebastian Thrun. We'll see him in a second. He was teaching about 50 students in his Introduction to Computer Science course at Stanford. Decided to see what would happen if he put it online. He did. 160,000 people registered for the class. 30,000 completed the class. 10,000 took an assessment to demonstrate that they, in fact, had mastered the material. And embarrassing to the students in the classroom, many of those finished ahead of the students in the Stanford class. I think the number one performer was a 40-year-old nurse in Ireland who took the course. But let's go on. So we've been privileged to partner with Udacity at Battelle. We got to know each other through a Columbus native who works there. I'll let you see it. Well, thanks, Matt. And we had and we asked each other a question, which is: could these courses that were designed for a college level audience, could they be utilized effectively by high school students? And so, really, it was no sooner than April or May of last year we said, well, let's see what we could do over the summer working together. And what you see is what came next.
Silicon Valley and a ride in a self-driving car. We challenge you and your friends to see how many Udacity classes you can take this summer. In the challenge's first week, over 350 teams joined the challenge, with over 1,500 participants.
The challenge is all about learning. You get to learn something new, and it's really exciting. Things like how to program a search machine or a self-driving car. We hope that you can not just learn for yourself, but get other people to learn something online.
We've teamed with some amazing organizations to make the challenge possible. The world's largest nonprofit research and development organization, Battelle, has joined us to cheer you on.
So check out the website, read the rules, get organized, and join the challenge.
So again, with about a month notice, we decided to give this a try last summer. Here's what happened. Put it up there. We had 408 teams. So our thinking was, while an individual may take this at the college level, why not have teams work together to take these college-level courses at the high school teams work together. We had 408 teams last summer, over 2,500 students. They completed together nearly 15,000 college-level units. Our winners in this contest came from the following states. Matt, go on to the next page. But they weren't just from the 50 states, the United States. We also had international teams who ended up signing up, and we could show those in the United Kingdom and Dominican Republic, and keep going. And we also, of course, had local teams. Many of you saw the terrific article about Reynoldsburg in the Columbus Dispatch this week. They not only participated over the summer, but they're continuing to work with Udacity. Right now, they've got 41 students who are taking. Go back, Matt. You've gone a little too fast for me. Right now, they're taking. They have 41 students who are taking Introduction to Statistics. Again, these are college-level courses, and they have 42. What is that? 48. My eyes are bad. 49. Somebody read for me. 49. Thank you. Students who are taking Introduction to Physics. Again, these are from the best professors in the world, and of course, working as a team together with the tutors that they have there, it is significantly broadening the curriculum that is available to all of our students. Keep going, Matt. We talked about student assessment tools, and keep moving forward. Here's a good example. This is a company that has real-time data on student performance, and it's available to every teacher on their personal iPhone. So every teacher has constantly updated, personalized information about the performance of their students, and they can then push the button on the iPhone and call the parent whenever they need to, because the phone number and information is plugged in. Keep going. Aimee mentioned briefly assessments, and this is, again, a tool that is constantly assessing student performance and updating it, and here's a little bit about assessments.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure for me as president of WPI to welcome you to this program this evening. I want to give a very special and warm welcome to all the teachers.
The assessment showcase tonight is a showcase to highlight actually how teachers that use assessments do it. They all do it a little differently, and they're all using different aspects of the assessment system.
It's just a powerful tool. You can just see exactly, you don't have to go over all the questions.
Assessments is a platform by which actually teachers write or edit questions, have their children actually get immediate feedback as they go and then get immediate reports so they can do something different in their classroom tomorrow?
Well, in my class, I use it for homework piece, mainly as book work. I use Quick Build, and I load in just the problem number, the page number, and the problem number, and then students will go in and put their answers. Next morning, I go in, pull up my report, and I can see what students didn't do well, what percentage of...
So I'll mention that Assessments is also free to schools, and we've been working together with others to make sure that we have training available to teachers so that they can use Assessments. This is a quote from a woman named Aimee Kennedy. You may have met her before, but they've implemented Assessments here at Metro, and they find it to be very, very effective. Let's keep going. I think Bill, either Aimee made the point, I believe, earlier, but I wanted to reemphasize it, that there's always this concern when we talk about technology in classrooms, Mayor and Council President, that we're trying to replace teachers. And actually nothing could be further from the truth. This is actually an article that was published in Education Week just last week by Sal Khan, the founder of Khan Academy. And you can see the headline is the rise of the tech-powered teacher. And the pull-out quote, which I think is really relevant, is that technology actually increases the amount of quality teacher-student reaction. The more information the teacher has, the more they can target their time and attention to exactly what a student needs, instead of guessing or just preparing lessons that are generalized for everybody. Let's keep going. We've talked about school models, so let's. These are beautiful pictures of Metro. We'll go through it, but I want you to see that Metro has already been replicated around the state of Ohio. Of course, we've mentioned Reynoldsburg already. This is a new school that opened just this fall in Portage County, Ohio. It's on the campus of Neomed, which is the public medical school, public university medical school in Northeast Ohio. And if I'm not mistaken, this is also run by the public school district in that community. So this is a public school district that started a school. This is MC Squared. This is the STEM school in Cleveland. It is absolutely a school of the Cleveland Municipal School District. It is a public school in every respect, open to the students across the school district. We have now 11 of these schools across Ohio that are part of the Ohio STEM Learning Network, which Aimee referred to earlier, and it's serving now 17,000 students. I should also mention that we at Battelle have opened as well. We managed a similar network in Tennessee, and we now have 5 schools that have opened in the last 2 years in Tennessee, exactly replicas of Metro. And we have one in Washington State because Battelle manages the Pacific Northwest National Lab, and so in that community where we are, we have the Delta School. So these schools are replicable, and they are run by public school districts, and districts are able to create the innovations that we seek. I put this up simply to point out that, as has been amply evident today by our technological failures, that we're at the very beginning of this revolution in which technology is impacting education. I had a chance to listen to a presentation by some former Ohio State professors who've started a company called Mindset Digital just yesterday. Many of you may have seen them, may have seen their presentation, and they very forcefully make the case that we are living in the most significant revolution in communications technology in history, and we're only at the beginning of it, and therefore we need to make sure that we are staying abreast of it. And one of the reasons I can tell you that we're only at the very beginning of this revolution, Mayor and Council President, is that the private sector is getting involved in investing in education technologies. Now, when we start thinking about private sector involvement in schools, I know what all the concerns are that are in the environment, but think about it this way. We've been buying textbooks for years from private publishers. We've been buying carpeting and computers and all sorts of other materials. So this is the same environment. Schools buy all sorts of private products, take a look at the investment that is going into educational technology. Keep going, Matt, and show them the increase that that we have seen. So what you're going to see is the products that are resulting from this investment. Obviously, not all this investment is going to pay off, and some of these companies are going to fail. But we are going to, in the next couple of years, see an explosion of new technologies, new products, and new services that are going to be available to schools to be able to change the way they. That's a national figure, right? That's a national figure, yes. So finally, I just wanted to close by going back to Udacity. Remember I told you about the 160,000 students who signed up for the course. My favorite one is a 13-year-old who was in Afghanistan, who was dodging mortar fire and rockets incoming, and also tells us that he had only about an hour a day of fairly solid internet connectivity to be able to get the assignments done, and yet he not only completed but he passed the course. And so the message for me, and what we certainly hope to frame today's conversation, Mayor and Council President, is for us to begin to appreciate that if the Internet has now allowed us to reach a teenager in Kabul who is then able to take a Stanford-level computer science course, then certainly we can reach every student in Columbus with high-quality content that matches their interest and makes them college and career ready. It's not easy, as we again have demonstrated today. There will be many glitches along the way, but thinking about the future of education in Columbus requires us to grapple with and understand the changing technological environment that schools and teachers are going to be operating in the coming years. I'm sorry, Mayor.
I agree. Technology is going to play a huge role in education in the future. But I know that there are, when kids get out of school, they do not always have access to technology, particularly a lot of students that go to Columbus public schools. How is that handled here in Metro and other places?
Sure, thanks for the question. Students actually, we buy computers. Students lease computers from us unless they are a free or reduced lunch student. Then their lease price is free or reduced. A full price lease is $150 a year. So students take their computers home with them. We have some students here who don't have internet at home. And so one thing that we do here that I didn't talk about was we have some virtual blended learning opportunities built into our school calendar. So for students that don't have internet at home, we work with them to find some real-world solutions. You know, is there a McDonald's in your neighborhood that has the internet? Is the library close to you? Is there a Starbucks? Maybe you need to plan ahead to take the bus to a place where there is internet. So we try to problem solve around, you know, in life, if you need the internet and you don't have it, how are you going to solve that problem? So that's one of the things we do here. And I know some of the other, particularly the assessments tool, some of those technologies are working to develop mechanisms that can use things like texting. So almost every kid here has a cell phone with texting, even if they don't have internet at home. So we try to sort of be flexible.
And I would add to that, Mayor, that next session in 2 weeks, we're going to talk about the community resources that are available. Sitting in the front row is Pat Lazinski, the terrific CEO of our nationally award-winning Columbus Public Library. That's a significant resource, but really only one example of the other resources that we can bring to bear to help assist in that way.
As technology becomes more and more a practice in our schools, we have to also solve the problem of lack of technology in many of our neighborhoods, and we've been talking about that.
And I think also, reflecting back on last week's session about workforce, if we're going to prepare our students for careers, Aimee used the phrase digital natives, right? They have to be digital natives. The companies they're going to go work for are going to expect the facility with technology. That's the environment in which these jobs will be created. So we have that obligation simply to succeed in the educational outcomes we desire. Bill.
It's almost become a cliche that when kids come to school, they power down. When they leave school, they power up. part of what has brought that expression about is not that everybody has a computer, but everybody now has not just a phone, but they have a smartphone. And the smartphone gives them the access that Aimee was talking about. And I think one of the big challenges in education in the future is if we know these kids when they leave the classroom, when they're out away from the schools, there are some who argue, I think Vander Ark might argue, that they're learning more. It may not be a structured curriculum, but they're learning more when they leave school with these phones than they are when they're in school, excepting Metro, of course. But I think if that's happening, then how do we integrate what's happening there? And again, I'm reminded of the Chicago Quest schools that have worked with businesses to create library-type environments in the city of Chicago where kids can draw down from all of the businesses and nonprofits in that area in a centralized place. It's called the Hive Network, and it's an exciting thing. The Hive Network, H-I-V-E.
And yeah, no, I understood. I don't want to be. I don't think we should be unmindful, Mayor, of the data we received in our first briefing about poverty in the city of Columbus, and we know that we do have children who do not have access to those technologies, and frankly are not being surrounded by by rich content when they're outside of the school building, and I think that's an extraordinarily important issue, right? Issue for us to tackle. I think the point of just introducing the subject today is to begin to become familiar with the rich resources that are out there, and then we can begin to develop strategies on how we can access those resources for the children in Columbus. Are there any other comments that either of you would like to make today? So thank you again, Bill and Aimee, for your presentations. Thank you to Metro for hosting us, and to all of you. Remind people that all of the information presented today is on the city's website at columbus.gov/education. All of the presentations you've seen today will be available there. We have one more briefing that the mayor and the council president have scheduled, and that is for 2 weeks from today. For those of you who have been following these briefings, we will take 1 week off. There's an event going on next week, an election, I think, that might take our time and attention. We'll come back in 2 weeks at the Franklin Park Conservatory to talk about the issue that just arose at the end of this session. It was a perfect lead-in, and that is the community resources and the responsibility of the community, both the nonprofit sector and the for-profit businesses in this community, to assist in achieving the educational outcomes we desire for our children. So thank you very much for being here today.